Hi everybody, Norman Van Aken here with one of my treasure books from the treasure book series. This one goes way back with me. This book was published before I took cooking seriously. I was I was a lot of different things for a while after no more college. The war in Vietnam was over and I could decide what to do with my life. And so for a period of time I did an array of bad jobs. Factory work, carnival, true. Working on the golf course, mowing the lawns, 8 hours a day with the sound of a motor in your ears. House painter, bad carpenter, and then a roofing job, and that really did it in for me. I wrote about that story in my memoir, and I won't repeat it here, but I was fired, and I thought that was a good thing for a minute, and then I realized that rent was due. I went and found a newspaper that was for looking for jobs, and I was looking for a job, and it said, short order cook needed, no experience necessary. I thought, well, I certainly have no experience, and so I circled that, and I went over to the place where they had the restaurant, and I applied for the job after hiding my long ponytail behind myself, and lo and behold, they hired me, and I started. That was 1972. Like I say, this book was published in 73, but it took me a little further down the road before I would begin even reading cookbooks. I love to read, mind you, and I was told since an early age how much I love to read, and I did. I love to read. And this book starts off like some kind of adventure story. He writes, his name is Roy Andres de Groot. He writes, "It is 15 years since I first approached the forbidding granite wall of rock, found the jagged cleft cut by the rushing torrent of the river, negotiated the narrow road on the ledge above the ravine, swung around the hairpin turns, and plunged through one rock tunnel after another until I found myself in the sun-splashed forest, surrounded, it seemed, by an orchestra of 1,000 birds, singing in harmony 100 songs. The trees parted as if they were a stage curtain to bring me, for the first time, into the extraordinary valley of La Grande Chartreuse. Within a few minutes, I was sitting at a perfectly laid table with a snow-white cloth, the warm October sun reflected from the wine glasses, the porcelain plates, and the silver in the garden of the Auberge of the Flowering Hearth, hence the name. I was working in Key West at a restaurant owned by a guy who was kind of a hard guy in a way on the surface, but really he was a lovely guy, Philip. The Port of Call restaurant, my Key West friends will remember it. And I'd been cooking for 6 or 7 years, but it was at the Port of Call that I began to envision the life of being a restaurant owner, the chef patron. And this book came into my hands at that time, and I read it, and it became a kind of a template for me of how I might move from being a line cook to being a person who owned a restaurant. In the high alpine valley of La Grande Chartreuse, near the sleepy little village of Saint Pierre de Chartreuse, that seems not yet to have entered the 20th century, Roy Andres de Groot discovered by accident a charming and unpretentious little inn, the Auberge of the Flowering Hearth. He became friends with the owners, two extraordinary Frenchwomen who seemed to devote themselves to perpetuating the tradition of supreme country dining, using as their principal cooking instrument a great open wood-burning hearth. They devised simple preparations of local seasonal ingredients, proving that the historic provincial cuisine of France was as modern as the hour. Their names were Mademoiselles Artaud and Girard. The book might have fallen into my hands now that I think about it. I worked at the Port of Call 2 different times. I gotten fired because of a storm and the stormy nature of my mentor chef, but he hired me back. But in the interim, I was hired by a woman named Nancy. Nancy was a Francophile. and a regal person. And she probably was the person that turned me onto this book. And I'm grateful for it because it really gave me a sense of how to become a chef in ways that I hadn't figured out before. Remember, this is before I read the Chez Panisse Menu Cookbook, before Alice wrote the book. Alice comments about this book, and I'll get into that for a second, but come on over here, camera lady, so they can take a screenshot of this beautiful menu. Now remember, this would have been written somewhere prior to 73 because Echo Press published this in 73. Reading this menu, I look back at this now, and I feel like this is, in many ways, the design that taught me what I was looking for. And then not terribly long after, I became Charlie's chef, Charlie Trotter. Charlie came to work with us in the kitchen in Lake Forest. And as I see this menu now, I see how they probably imprinted something on us, both Charlie and I, in such a way as you had the orchestration of the dishes, complete with the wines, getting into the cheeses, the local cheeses, and then a cake, a gâteau de Savoie. And so it became one of my earliest treasure books. Julia Child had this to say about Mr. de Groot's work. This cookbook is a whole way of life. What care, love, and work have gone into it. I find it fascinating. I think people would just love it, as it is not like anything else around. One more fascinating thing about Mr. de Groot. He did all this, went over there from America to France, cataloged the lives and the cooking and the recipes of these ladies, all the while being completely blind. It just goes to show you, the things that you treasure, you'll overcome obstacles to share them with the world. And I would like to submit that this book might be one you should have in your library too. Thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you again soon. Have a good night.